that we have turned a major page in the revolution to restore our republic. We've turned a major corner. What happened in southern Nevada, right on the border with Arizona, is so unprecedented in modern times. Such pure, crystalline Americana. And so real. And, of course, the enemy will say, oh, the BLM just backed down in one spot. Yes, but the fact is, if you let one ant stand up, they might all stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. In fact, maybe the start of the next segment, if we have time, we should play the ants intro. And maybe later the V for Vendetta one, because, I mean, that's what it's all about here. And you've got to weigh each situation. But this is so unspeakably amazing. I want to try to calmly, when we come back, get into all the angles of it. It's an issue of the mainstream media dying. It's an issue of the government not having credibility. It's an issue of the fact they tried to lie to the public and said he didn't have any property rights to it when they had the surface forage and water rights since 1877. The BLM tried to buy his land a decade ago because he did have rights. He just didn't physically own it. He had the grazing rights, and they played on public ignorance. Even Fox News put out reports. I couldn't believe it watching it yesterday and the day before, and even some mainline conservative talk show host acting like Bundy was cheating the taxpayer, not paying grazing rights. When his great, was it said 6 generations ago, 7 generations, he said? It was 7 generations ago when that wasn't even a territory. And they went out there. That's when they got the rights. And the public is just so ignorant about law. And there's the law of the gun now with government. The government had a bunch of guns. And when I saw the paramilitary BLM they called out in the confrontation that happened yesterday, the historic standoff, they looked like serious paramilitaries, not like normal BLM. And they were all ready and looked eager to start shooting people. Just a simple bloodlust. But I do know a lot of police and people here in Austin. I ran into 2 yesterday, strangely enough, that were following our Facebook, following others, watching the videos online. And we're just so happy that the citizens didn't get shot up in a firefight or the BLM. But we're rooting for the people. Just the 2 cops I ran into yesterday. I talked to somebody else who ran into a cop and heard them listening to my show off duty as a security guard, listening to the show, and they said, oh, you listen to Alex Jones? Oh, yeah, I'm so glad this didn't end violently. This is such a big deal. I mean, I'll break it all down and tell the truth of what really happened when we come back, and then I'm going to get into all the other news, and there's a lot of it. The situation in Ukraine has now turned into a civil war as the globalists planned, old-fashioned order out of chaos. The BATF publicly confirms administration's ammunition import ban plan. We're going to get more into Senator Sessions, saying there's a deliberate plan to collapse U.S. law enforcement on the border. We're going to get into Obama now admitting that they're using the heartbleed as an NSA tool. I told you that was the NSA doing that, and that's a no-brainer. We're going to explain why. It's now admitted 5 days after I told you that was the case. And then we're going to get into the IRS coming after you for your... Well, I'll tell you about it coming up. From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new InfoWars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line.
The Alex Jones Show, because there is a war on for your mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, today is Sunday, the 13th day of April, 2014. I'm your host, Alex Jones. Yesterday, on April 12th, 2014, on that Saturday, we saw one of the most historical events in not just U.S. history, but world history. And it will become a defining moment in the future of this republic and whether this country will right itself or whether we will go down the drain as so many other corrupt empires have. It's the top story, red linked up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Historic, feds forced to surrender to American citizens. This story that I'm going to get into is so incredibly important, and the corporate Decepticon media, from CNN to Fox News, I've got to say, did their best to deceive their viewers. MSNBC, of course, was just calling people terrorists outright, so Fox was good compared to them. This is a story about media manipulation. It's a story about land rights. It's a story about courage. It is so Americana what happened. I was watching it live in live video feeds with David Knight and Josh Owens, our reporters in southern Nevada, there at the Bundy 600,000-acre ranch, as I saw more than 200 paramilitary BLM, along with state police and others, pointing high-powered rifles at a crowd of close to 1,000 people, saying that if they cross the line onto Bundy's grazing land, which he owns the rights to, owns the surface rights, the water rights, the forage rights, cut and dry. The governor's on record. People are ignorant. The mainstream media plays all these games. Tries to say, well, he didn't pay his grazing fee that they announced 10 years ago when he wouldn't sell his property to him. We now learn to build a Chinese government-controlled solar farm that Harry Reid and his son make money off of. And by the way, that broke 2 years ago, but we broke it on Friday that he was connected into it. It was known that was going on, but the fact that now that this controversy had blown up with a standoff, no one had pointed this out. Well, we did. DrudgeReport.com picked it up, and it was rated by Alexa and 4 other rating services as the #1 hands-down story on the internet, with tens of millions of people reading that one page alone on Infowars.com. Over 100,000 sites, because they have an aggregate system, copied our story and posted it on theirs. It's unknown how many people saw it. It's still linked up on DrudgeReport.com. Now, if you're a new listener and you say, what's going on, let me explain what happened, because this is so incredible. I don't have words to even describe it. Then we'll get into the latest on the economy, Ukraine, huge IRS announcements, a 4.9 magnitude earthquake, rattled central Idaho, a lot of interesting things that are happening, big anti-Second Amendment news coming up. Can the government seize your tax refund to pay a relative's debt? The courts are saying yes. CBS News, from 1960, you're going to have to pay your daddy's debt. 54 years later. So that's all going to be coming up today. Just the bizarre tyranny we're facing. First off, I just want to say this. Upwards of 90% of Nevada is now claimed to be federal. Another 5% state, so 5% is privately owned. The Bundys are on record, and it's filed with the state once it became a state, that in 1877 they founded the Bundy Ranch that 7 generations had ranched and farmed on. And then 10 years ago, they forced all the other farmers and ranchers to sell, 52 families. Bundy would not sell. I think he has like 18 kids or something. I mean, just a true Americana. And as this built the last few weeks, Infowars.com was the first national, international outlet to cover it. Drudge, the largest news aggregator in the world, the powerhouse, because it can set the agenda of what people are looking at and reading, picked up our story. It became a national story. Fox News, CNN picked it up. All the big national talk show hosts picked it up. And there was a big debate. Some national talk show hosts understood it about grazing rights and common law and all the rest of it. Others didn't. It was very disappointing to see Fox News and other people that I'm not even going to name. Folks heard it. Saying the Bundys are stealing from taxpayers. You're supposed to pay grazing rights. No, you're not when you were on the land and built the water pipes and the cisterns and the windmills in the last 100-plus years, last 140-plus years. I mean, my family is in ranching. My family got their land in Mexican land grants in 1829. Other parts of our family land that we still hold on to, after Mexico was kicked out of Texas, we just moved in and said it was our farm. That's how that works. And guess what? It's ours today. So I know how this works. When you got a lot of land, you get land disputes and all the rest of it. So we've dealt with this my whole life, okay? My dad goes to court all the time, represents himself and wins, dealing with land issues. So I know this whole situation. And I went and looked it up. And the governor came out and said, no, he's got grazing and surface rights and water rights. But the feds played on everyone's ignorance and said, man, you just got some crazy old guy in a cowboy hat out here, mad. Folks, they had cattle crossing signs on the major state and federal highways out there. They had cattle guards, fences he put up, pipes and windmills his great-great-great-granddaddies put up. Some of those cisterns were over 100 years old, rock cisterns with wells where you see windmills, they pump water up where the wildlife comes to drink. It's an oasis for the turtles, the deer, the antelope, the cougars. This is how humans make the desert better. And it turns out there's natural gas and oil there. We've confirmed that. And we got the federal documents on Friday where Harry Reid and the Chinese-backed company, it's a Chinese company, government-backed Chinese company, have a deal starting on 129 Mile, that's CBS News, from southern Nevada on his property, where he has the service rights, all the way up the western part of the state. And they were going to put a solar farm directly on that and the adjacent ranches they've taken. And Harry Reid, just like Solyndra, all the rest of it, his family was right sitting in the middle of it. The head of the BLM, his former chief of staff. You want me to keep going here? And what really got folks mad was over the week, paramilitary BLM showed up, and if you were anywhere in the county on the side of the road, they would taser you and beat you and attack you, including women, and said no free speech and put a little orange free speech pig pen up and said that's where you can go. And the governor said take that down, by the way. These are state highway right-of-ways. You can't do that. So the governor did get involved under some pressure. But it really got crazy, and everybody saw those Tiananmen Square-style images of the German Shepherds attacking people and the tasers going into men and women and